desktops, at least the laptops in the presentation rooms. We still try to do that, but sometimes these days the technology is pretty reliable, so you can actually access your presentation from iGroups. We discourage you from kind of making last-minute changes, although it happens. So if you do have an updated presentation, or you have some special software such as Prezi that's running your presentation, it's okay if you switch out the laptops. Generally it can be done in a minute, so it's not really as much of a challenge as it used to be in the old days. So that's what I had to say about the deliverables. Any other questions about what's required in the next few days? Gentleman in the front row.
More of a comment than that is, I'm kind of a suspenders and belt kind of guy. So, when you come to the presentation, maybe bring your presentation, on a flash drive as well, just in case the technology doesn't work quite perfectly that day.
That's always a good recommendation. One question? It should be on the handout for the 397 guidelines, but I think it's also on Monday, the 16th. I'm not sure what time of day, if it's different, but we're fine with that. Other questions? We want to make this as stress-free as possible, so that all we can do to answer your questions, I think the less uncertainty we'll need. We want to avoid ambiguity on both sides. There's a registration table near the southeast entrance. There's a refreshments area there, and there's a table for teams to pick up your posters if they were left in the idea shop, to pick up some supplies for mounting your posters at the last minute and things like that. So there's a resource for you as well. We'll probably be setting up around 7 in the morning, so we'll be there early if you want to come in either early in the morning or even the day before to bring in some of your exhibit materials if it takes some time to do that. The more time you can prepare in advance, the better, so there's less stress when you're starting off. There's a judges' breakfast where we orient the judges to what the experience is about, and after that, the event kicks off at 10 a.m., so they'll be scattering to visit your exhibits and go to your presentation rooms, and we try to start right on time so that the whole day doesn't get backed up, and it seems to work out pretty well from semester to semester. So it's good to be there in advance so that you're all set up and ready to go.
How late can you come the night before and set stuff up?
Well, it depends on how late the hub staff is there. We've seen teams there as late as 10 or 11 o'clock. It depends whether the building is still open or not. But usually they're still setting up the different tables, and so you still have a chance to come in the day before and set things up if you want to, either during the day or in the evening. Well, they try to set the tables up as soon as possible for that. Sometimes they're set up a day or so in advance. Sometimes they're still putting skirting on at the last minute, so it depends. There are a lot of tables to put skirts on, so it takes a while. But generally by the evening, things are pretty well set up, so the students can go home as well after they set things up. So, any other questions? Any suggestions? Which name is this again? Okay. Well, it depends on how much open space there is around it as well. Sometimes you'll find that there's plenty of space for prototypes in the open floor. But we can make a note of that, and the hub staff can also maybe accommodate positioning of the exhibit. Other question? Well, you can send an email to IPRO@IIT.edu, and one of us will answer that for you. Generally, each team gets a 12-foot length of table. There seems to be more than enough for most projects. If you need an extra length of table, we can also try to accommodate that depending on where it is. The 397 teams just get a 6-foot table. It also looks very nice. It's just short. And it's in the gallery area. We'll have all 20 teams from IPRO 397 in that area.
Question.
Yes.
I'm new to the actual process for the presentation. Do we leave our exhibit on the table that we are given and then go downstairs, do a presentation, come back, or do we have like set up a, let's say all entire exhibit downstairs when we present?
No, you don't have to do it. Your exhibit stays in place. We tell the judges that they have to respect the fact that if you're presenting at a certain time, they shouldn't be trying to visit your exhibit 15 minutes before and after your presentation time. So you don't have to worry about them showing up. And generally, there are people wandering around looking to make sure that nothing disappears. You get in trouble with that?
Should we leave a note on there, say at the presentation or something?
You could as well.
All right, cool.
And say when you're going to be back.
I'll be right back.
Other questions? The name badges will be put in envelopes and they'll be put on your tables. Also, if you happen to request hard copies of brochures or abstracts, those will be put on your tables as well. And any loose posters that we find that are not picked up over here will put on your tables also. More questions? At the end of the day, that's a good question. We don't throw anything away. We collect all the posters that seem to have some lasting value, and we collect them and try to reuse them for occasions like this to show people. We do ask you to pick up any food waste and things like that. And actually, we're making a point this IPRO Day of making a sustainable meal experience, so that we're working with the Office of Campus Energy and Sustainability. They're going to help us sort our food waste and boxes and other things like that, so that we can be sorted and organized in a sustainable way. But don't leave any personal belongings behind. Sometimes we find umbrellas. I still have a few in my office over the years. I've collected a lot of pens and pencils. I had somebody build up our inventory of pencils in the idea shop. So make sure your personal belongings are picked up under the tables and on the tables. Maybe possible, you have to talk to Josh Tate about that. We only have a limited number of TVs. The hub itself has TVs, so it depends on what's available. First come, first served as well. Okay, so pretty much good. If you have further questions, you can always email us. That might come up in the next few days.
I have a last.
Yes.
For the presentation, is the projector going to be set up, or we have to do that?
Everything is set up in advance. There'll be a laptop and projector turned on. Our hub staff does a good job of making sure everything is running. There's an internet connection in every room. We actually rely on wireless connections now. We don't have to have market cables, so it's progress. Everything seems to be pretty stable and works well. As far as where your presentations were assigned, it was fairly random. There's no prejudice involved for different tracks or whatever. We have different kinds of shapes and sizes of presentation rooms, and none of them are necessarily first class, but they all do an adequate job for the 2 minutes that you're there. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment with regards to your presentation. Make sure that you check that particular room and that particular computer to make sure you have the right version of it there. This stuff happens. And also take the time, and you've got several breaks. You've got the lunch break, or you can come early before 10 o'clock when the presentation starts. To run through to make sure that actually help. If you've gotten clever or cute and you're doing some special effects, be careful, but make sure they work. Because you don't have, and the judges have very little mercy, they're on a very tight schedule. And if you get these judges in particular, you've got 20 minutes. And if you're going to spend the first 5 minutes fiddling with your presentation, trying to get it to turn on, or adjusting it in some fashion, that's all time. You'll want to make sure that you check it.
The good news is that there is 15 minutes built in between each presentation, and that's usually enough slack time to accommodate checking things out. I would point out too that there are criteria that each team is evaluated against, both for the exhibits and the presentations, and that's available at the IPRO website too. So you could actually gauge how well your presentation or exhibit will stack up against the criteria that's used to evaluate it, and that's how we decide which how teams are ranked in the tracks.
I'm sorry, what did you say the criteria for?
It's at the IPRO website under IPRO something. We have different criteria for the 397 teams. So.
Is that the same location?
No, that isn't up there. So we'll have to show that.
I'll show real quick.
Yes. Or 397? Yeah, actually, I made it up yesterday. I can probably print out a few copies for you. Okay. So you can see that. Yes, ma'am.
On the 15 minutes between presentations, 15 minutes between presentations is often used by the judges to discuss the presentation. So it's really not a good idea to be spending that 15 minutes for the team to be in there fooling around with the computer. So best time is in the morning or lunch.
Good point. Any other questions? And you'll have time yet while you're here to ask follow-up questions. So I'd like to move on. We have a panel here which I'm delighted has volunteered their time to share with you their experience and observations and suggestions for having a successful IPRO Day experience. They're longtime IPRO Day judges and IPRO instructors who have guided successful teams throughout a semester as well as at IPRO Day. So I'll let them introduce themselves. And then we'll allow them to share their perspectives on whether it's presentations or posters, which you might keep in mind as you complete your work.
So let me ask a question. How many of you, is this your first semester IPRO? And how many of you have been designated or volunteered to be or one of the speakers during the presentation? Okay, so about half. And how many of you are from 397? I'm Jim Braband. I've been teaching in the IPRO program this is the beginning of my 8th year. I teach exclusively in the program, so I can claim the prize for the most IPROs taught, somewhere between 60 and 70, somewhere between 600 and 700 students, so lots of IPROs, and so I bring to this table my experience there in terms of teams that have been successful and a number of teams that have been on the other end of the distribution that have not been successful, and some of the experiences and some of the reasons why. I'm also accompanied here by several esteemed judges who are going to share with you some of the do's and don'ts from the judge's perspective. And Lena Shuni at the end here is what I consider a true exhibit expert. And some of her work is over here under Removit's, her students' work, but her guidance. And when she uses the word board, that's actually a poster. She uses the word board. I finally got used to it after a couple semesters.
I wasn't describing
That's okay. So what we're going to do here, everybody will introduce themselves, and then I'm going to ask these two guys here, Myron and Bob, to share the do's and don'ts from the judge's perspective. And I would really suggest that you take notes, because it may well turn out that one of these guys is your judge.
Good afternoon. I'm Myron Gottlieb. I'm a retired chemical engineer in the energy marketplace. I retired in 1998 and found IIT about 2003. And I've been working with Bob Anderson, who can certainly speak for himself in a few seconds. But we're in the technology transfer office here. We deal with patents, licensing patents, selling patents,